I served Lu Xian for 8 years, working my way up from assistant to his indispensable chief secretary, keeping my unspoken love hidden. He was about to get engaged to someone else, so I gritted my teeth and quit. But then I threw myself into a car accident to save him. In my drunken haze, I blurted out, "I love him." I thought that would be the end of it, but instead, he showed up with a ring and insisted on marrying me. This twisted fate, starting with a life-saving debt and dragging on for 10 years, couldn't be escaped. At 30, I was ready to quit. This secret love had come to an end. I spent 5 years working my way up from assistant to becoming Lu Xian's chief secretary. Then, I spent 3 more years making myself irreplaceable to him. Finally, I spent 5 minutes writing my resignation letter and 1 second to submit it. When I handed over my resignation, Lu Xian furrowed his brows and looked at me quietly, asking for a reason. I lowered my head, avoiding his gaze, and forced a smile. "Mr. Lu, I'm 30 now. It's time for me to get married." I paused, then added, "My boyfriend proposed to me not long ago. To make my resignation easier, I told a harmless lie." Lu Xian's fingers tapped rhythmically on the desk, signaling his agitation. Maybe I should be thankful that he was at least bothered by my departure. After a long silence, Lu Xian handed the resignation back to me. "I can grant you marriage leave, but I hope you'll think carefully about resigning." For a moment, I hesitated. A voice in my head kept whispering, "Agree to it, agree to it, at least you can see him all the time." But another voice warned, "Zhang Yu, he's getting engaged. Loving a married man is immoral." My hands hovered in the air for a while, but I didn't take the letter. This job is too busy. After marriage, I want to focus more on my family. I'll finish up everything I'm working on. Sorry, Mr. Lu. Once I said this, Lu Xian didn't say anything else. He simply said, "I understand. Happy marriage." Before I left the office, Lu Xian had already buried himself in work again. After all, to him, I was just an employee, probably the most capable one. That day, I sat at my desk, staring at the potted plant in front of me, lost in thought for a rare moment. I rarely had time to space out. My daily work was so busy, I had to coordinate tasks and also act as Lu Xian's personal assistant. I kept my phone on standby 24/7. Whenever Lu Xian needed me, I had to be there immediately, juggling multiple roles. Of course, Lu Xian paid me a high salary, and in a few years, I achieved financial independence. Xiao Meng called my name several times before I snapped back to reality. "Zhang Jia, Mr. Lu asked me to tell you to go ahead and make the arrangements for tonight's party." The party was to welcome Shen Bai, who had just returned from studying abroad. The people attending were all from Lu Xian's inner circle. The young heirs of several prominent families, wealthy, well-connected, and with high expectations. Generally speaking, outsiders weren't welcome in their circle, but there was no other choice. I was simply too useful. I was the one who could manage everyone's moods, organize the event perfectly, and avoid any mistakes. When I arrived at the venue, I immediately got to work, from food to drinks to desserts, making sure to account for everyone's preferences and allergies. The lilies in the hall had to be removed because young Master Zhang was allergic. The lights were dimmed a little for young Master Qin, who had just had eye surgery. I also made sure to set aside the Monkey King tea that young Master Shen liked. As the sun set, people began to arrive. The first to enter was Qin Shi, who greeted me with a wave. "When will Xian arrive?" I checked my watch and answered cautiously, "He's in a meeting tonight, probably in about an hour." He slumped on the sofa, looking tired with dark circles under his eyes. I asked someone to lower the music and gave him a blanket. "It's chilly tonight, don't catch a cold, they'll be here in a while, so take a break." He smiled and took the blanket, teasing, "By the way, are you sure you're not considering dumping Lu Xian and coming to work for me? I'll pay you twice the salary." With people like him, many would rush to flatter him, but I stood out because I wanted nothing from them. That's why I got along with them more freely and earned their respect. Following his words, I smiled and responded, "I'll keep that in mind. If I ever need a new job, I'll come to you, young Master Qin." As the night deepened and the streetlights flickered on, people slowly gathered. Lu Xian entered wearing a black coat, carrying with it a touch of autumn's chill. I took his coat from him, thinking that maybe this would be the last time. When the drinks were flowing, I found an opportunity to mention my resignation. "Over the years, you've all taken care of me. I'm leaving now. I didn't know much back then and made plenty of mistakes. Thank you for your patience all these years." I raised a glass to everyone. "We'll be far apart in the future, but I hope we'll meet again sometime." Perhaps because of the autumn chill, There was a tinge of sadness in the air, and the table fell quiet for a moment. It was Qin Ming who finally raised his glass and broke the silence. At first, I thought you had some hidden agenda with Cyan, but now I believe it. Everyone understood what he meant, since all of Lu Xian's previous secretaries had been fired for confessing their feelings to him. Later, Lu Xian only hired male secretaries. But that didn't stop him from being confessed to, earning him the nickname, Heartthrob of Thousands. Someone slapped Lu Xian's shoulder, laughing. Who would have thought? Someone managed to escape your charm. Lu Xian lit a cigar, smiling but swearing. Get lost. After dinner, a few of them gathered for a casual card game to pass the time. During the game, Qin Shi casually asked, Cyan, have you met that girl from the Su family your grandmother arranged for you? My heart skipped a beat, and I almost froze in place. A moment later, Lu Xian casually replied, no, as long as my grandmother is happy, who I marry doesn't matter. Their marriages were always mixed with business interests, carefully weighed to benefit both sides. From a certain perspective, they received resources most people could only dream of, and the cost was reasonable. It seemed like Lu Xian had already accepted that rule. I had met Su Wan once. She was a gentle, beautiful girl from Jiangnan, so I hoped that, if possible, Lu Xian's ending would be different from everyone else's. The dinner continued late into the night. The driver had been waiting outside, and as the party broke up, he took people home. However, Lu Xian's driver got into a minor accident and arrived late. This led to an unwanted scene of just the two of us alone. We stood together under the streetlight, our voices stretched by the dim glow. At times like this, all the bitterness and dark thoughts inside me surged. But Lu Xian was unaware. He stood quietly, the alcohol making him less sharp than usual. Soon, the driver finally arrived. Lu Xian turned to me with a gentlemanly smile and asked, shall we go together? I shook my head, offering a grateful yet distant smile. Thank you, Mr. Lu, but my fiancé is already on his way. With that, Lu Xian didn't say anything else. He nodded slightly and got into the car. Finally, I was left alone. The masks I'd worn during the day could finally come off. I kicked off my heels and sat on the flower bed, feeling strangely lost. For a moment, I didn't know where to go. Soon, the first raindrops of autumn began to fall. The chill from the rain seeped through me. I walked barefoot along the road. The rich neighborhood was so vast that it took me a long time to find a place to hail a cab. The usual route was under construction, and the driver didn't know, so he had to take a detour. Lu Xian didn't expect to see me again, standing in the rain by the side of the road, holding a shoe in one hand. He was a bit surprised. He had never seen Zhang Yu, the secretary, act so casual. After all, at work, I was always impeccably dressed, my shirt buttons all the way up. He'd seen many women lower their collars and lean over to get his attention, but I was different. That's why he kept me around, because of my professionalism and my discretion. As he passed by, the driver ahead asked, should we give Miss Zhang a ride? Lu Xian's expression didn't change. He simply answered, no need. He had developed a bad opinion of my fiancée. Zhang Yu was a smart woman, but it seemed that her eyes weren't as clear as they used to be. But when it came to love, it was like drinking water. Only the person drinking knew the temperature. He couldn't intervene. I wasn't sure if I saw Lu Xian's car or if I just imagined it. But in the distance, a flash of light made me second guess. The rich area was so quiet that it felt like I was the only one who needed a cab. Finally, after a long wait, my ride came. By the time I got home, it was already 2 or 3 in the morning. The house was eerily quiet. I told people I had a happy family, a fiancé who loved me, and many friends. They'd always look at me enviously and say, life is perfect, you have everything. But in reality, I had nothing. No family, no lover, no friends. When I was in middle school, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. She had surgery, but it relapsed within 6 months. One ordinary morning, my dad went to work and never came back. He took all the money, leaving my sick mother and me behind. When my mom heard the news, she was unusually calm. She silently went through chemotherapy and hospital stays. She would cook when she felt better. One evening, I came home from school to find a table full of food. My mom was sitting across from me, smiling. For some reason, I felt a wave of inexplicable fear. There was a strange smell coming from the food. I remembered the rat poison my mom had bought. That day, I realized my mom's strength, how powerful her grip was. I couldn't break free. In a panic, I managed to slip away and somehow ended up on the rooftop. My mom cried, opening her arms toward me. speaking incoherently. Sweetheart, this world is so cruel. I can't leave you here alone. Let's go together. We'll be mother and daughter again in the next life. I cried, too, so tired and longing for the scent of laundry detergent on my mom. I thought, maybe it would be better to end it all. The wind on the rooftop was so strong, but my mom's embrace was warm. Hand in hand, she walked to the edge. Just as we were about to fall, a pair of slender, strong hands grabbed me. He pulled me with all his strength, no matter how I struggled. In the swirling wind, all I could see were his bright, piercing eyes. I survived, but my mom didn't. That person was Lu Xian. He not only saved me, but gave me a reason to live, gratitude. I felt like I had betrayed my mother. At that moment, I was like someone drowning, desperately clinging to a piece of driftwood, and Lu Xian was that driftwood. Later, the fire truck, police car, and ambulance all arrived. Amidst the crowd, I grabbed his hand and looked up at him. How can I repay you? I still remember how 16-year-old Lu Xian lowered his head and looked at me seriously, telling me, then remember to come find me. It felt as though my life was stuck in the night my mother died, and Lu Xian was the only hope I had. That night, like every other, I was swallowed by dreams, filled with past events. I saw my mother at the end, questioning me why I didn't go with her. I also saw the silent look my father gave me before he left home. I woke up drenched in sweat, only to find I could no longer speak. I checked my temperature, 38.8 degrees Celsius. If it were me in the past, I would have just taken some fever medicine and continued with work as usual. This time, though, I unexpectedly took a day off. I needed some time to think about my future path. When Lu Xian came to the office, he noticed that Zhang Yu wasn't there. After asking, he learned that she was sick and had taken a leave. He frowned, and his impression of her so-called fiancé plummeted. Assistant Xiao Meng temporarily replaced Zhang Yu's duties and brought him a cup of coffee. Lu Xian took a slow sip, his expression unchanged. There was one extra sugar cube, but he didn't say anything. After one sip, he didn't drink anymore. During the morning meeting preparations, there was another mistake. Thankfully, he already knew the focus of the negotiation, so nothing major happened. The office temperature was turned down a degree, the humidifier wasn't on, and his throat felt a little dry. By the end of the day, nothing seemed wrong, but everything just felt a little off. For the first time, Lu Xian thought about Zhang Yu. He rarely thought of her because she didn't seem to have much presence. Zhang Yu's presence was the kind that subtly blended in, like spring rain, so gentle you didn't notice it, but everything was just right. He frowned again. This was the second time he had furrowed his brows today. It was because of Zhang Yu's unfortunate fiancé who had stolen his chief secretary. I spent the whole day lying down, thinking about my future, but still couldn't figure out what I should do. I felt like a ship lost in a vast ocean, unable to tell which way was which. So, the next morning, I obediently went back to work. When I arrived at the office, Xiao Meng looked at me cautiously and whispered, "Mr. Lu doesn't seem in a good mood. He only had one sip of coffee this morning." The coffee from last night was still on the table. I dipped my finger into it and took a small sip, then instructed, "You put one extra sugar cube in. It has to be 3 sugar cubes, one more, one less, and it's not right." I carefully demonstrated how to make the coffee again, and Xiao Meng watched closely. By the time the coffee was ready, Lu Xian had arrived at the office. I don't know if it was my imagination, but it seemed like his gaze lingered a little longer on the corner of my lips than usual, and his eyes carried a hint of sorrow. The handover of work was more troublesome than I expected. I had so many tasks that handing everything over at once wasn't easy. Moreover, Lu Xian was never easy to serve. He always had meticulous instructions for every little thing in life. So I grabbed a notebook and began writing everything down, from small details to big ones. But this delay meant that the handover, which was supposed to take a month, would be postponed, and that led me to the last thing I wanted to do. I had to pick up Su Wan from the airport and take her to the family mansion. I felt guilty about Su Wan, and although I had done nothing wrong, I couldn't help but feel a little guilty when I saw her. Su Wan was wearing a light blue kipao with a green jade necklace around her neck, which immediately revealing its value. Her hair was neatly pinned with a hairpin, making her stand out in the crowd as someone with wealth and grace. I smiled and approached. "Miss Su, Mr. Lu asked me to pick you up." On the way, Su Wan asked me some questions about Lu Xian. Getting married to someone you've only met a few times is naturally unsettling. I could sense her unease, so I comforted her gently. "Mr. Lu is a very good person. Don't worry, Miss Su. If you ever need anything, Feel free to come to me. She looked up at me, grateful for my reassurance. We talked all the way to the family mansion, where we were meant to drop her off before leaving. Old Mr. Lou called me over. He was known for his iron-fisted approach in the business world, and now, in his 70s, he was still sharp, his eyes keen as ever. Secretary Sue, where's Cyan? Hasn't Mr. Lou arrived at the mansion yet? I maintained a neutral expression and carefully answered, there's a lot going on at the office today. Mr. Lou may be late. Old Mr. Lou snorted coldly and ordered me to bring Cyan back. I had personally seen old Mr. Lou discipline Lou Cyan in the past, 6 lashes, bloody and bruised. Even now, marks remained on Lou Cyan's back. I quickly dialed Lou Cyan's number, and by the 3rd try, he finally answered. I hurriedly asked where he was, but he didn't answer. After a long pause, he called my name, Zhang Yu. His voice was hazy, like he had been drinking, and there was the sound of strong sea winds in the background. I think I knew where he was. I rushed over and found him leaning against a rocky outcrop by the shore, a few cans of supermarket brand liquor beside him. His hair was messy from the wind. When he heard the noise, he looked up at me. His eyes were clouded, but still sharp, as though he was drunk, but maybe not. You're here? Wait a minute, I'll be right there. Lou Cyan patted the spot beside him lightly, signaling for me to sit. Let's talk. The Lou mansion was located not far from the cliff. At night, it looked like a lit-up palace, its ancient design still maintaining a certain charm. Suddenly, Lou Cyan asked, do you think it looks good? My gaze lingered on his sharp jawline, and I answered without thinking, it's beautiful. My face turned bright red, but thankfully, he didn't notice. Instead, he continued, but in reality, it's just a tomb. No matter how beautiful the white jade walls and golden horses are, what's inside are just countless dry bones. He said this with a smile, but his words were serious. It's rumored that the Lou family's rise to power wasn't entirely clean. There were many gray areas, and they were in the process of transforming. I had been with him for 7 years, watching him slowly take control of the Lou group. How many storms did he go through? How many secret and overt attacks? It's not something I can share with outsiders. So I asked him, are you tired? Happy? The 2 words rolled off his tongue. He suddenly smiled but didn't answer my question. Instead, he looked at me and said, your fiancé isn't good enough. I froze for a moment, but he didn't say anything more. He just nodded in apology. Sorry, I crossed the line. Lou Cyan finished his drink, then stood up, immediately transforming back into the composed and distinguished Mr. Lou. On the way home, I couldn't stop thinking about what he meant by those words. I thought about it for a long time, but still couldn't come to an answer, just like how I had never figured out why he had appeared on that broken rooftop years ago. But it didn't matter anymore because I was going to resign. From now on, with the mountains and rivers far apart, it seemed we would never meet again. The day I resigned was a rainy one. In the south, the rain was always like this, fine and continuous, as if it would never end. I sat at my desk, silently packing my things. I had spent almost 10 years here, from a clueless 20-year-old to someone who could handle things on my own. I knew that every morning at 9, the sunlight would slant across the cactus I kept on my desk. I also knew that if I stood on tiptoe, I could see Lou Cyan's silhouette through the gap in the door. I had lived my life, stumbling through it, relying on these small comforts, but now, I was leaving. I had repaid the life-saving, a life debt. I repaid it for 8 years. The remaining years should be spent by Su Wan accompanying him. Xiao Ming's eyes were filled with tears as she looked at me. I wiped away her tears and smiled, saying, silly, it's not like we'll never see each other again. But deep down, I knew that we would never meet again. This city has left me with too much pain, so I must leave. When I turned to leave, there was still some regret. The regret was that I had intentionally delayed for so long, yet I never got to see Lou Cyan one last time. After resigning, I slept all day at home, as if I were making up for all the sleep I had lost over the years. I also bought some alcohol and turned the TV volume up to the max. A comedy was playing on the TV, and I laughed like a fool. After laughing, I sat there in a daze, staring at the dark room around me, not knowing what to do. When I was a child, my biggest wish was to study hard, hoping that if my grades were good enough, my parents would stop fighting. Later, when my dad left, my wish was to make a lot of money so that my mom could survive. Then my mom passed away, and my wish became to become Lou Cyan's most capable assistant. If he was happy, I would be happy too. But now, I suddenly didn't know where to go. In a daze, The doorbell rang suddenly, and through the peephole, I saw that it was Lu Cyan. In a panic, I opened the door, only to realize I was still wearing my pink bunny pajamas. By the time I thought to close the door, it was too late. I could only force a professional smile and invite him in. Compared to my flustered state, Lu Cyan remained calm. He explained, "I tried calling you. This document is too urgent, and I couldn't find the backup draft. I happened to be nearby, so I drove over." The redness on my face was only brief. Quickly, I returned to my professional smile. "All right, Mr. Lu, please take a seat. I need to find the document." While I was searching for the document, Lu Cyan sat on the couch, his manners keeping him from looking around. Instead, he just stared at me. It made me feel nervous, and the more flustered I got, the harder it became to find what I was looking for. Lu Cyan chuckled lightly and comforted me. "Take your time." Then he asked, "Doesn't Secretary Yang's fiancé live here?" I instinctively lied. "He won't be back until tonight." After searching for half an hour, I finally got all the documents ready, printed them, and handed them to Lu Cyan. He took the papers but, for some reason, suddenly stared at me intently, making me uncomfortable. I was about to speak when he suddenly smiled, the kind of smile that was warm but still kept a certain distance. "I'm getting married soon. I really can't find the right person to handle this, so I was wondering if Secretary Zhang could help me? I'll still pay you your salary." I had no experience rejecting Lu Cyan. My body had already given the answer before my mind could catch up. I nodded inexplicably and then gave him a small smile. The words I had prepared somehow got stuck in my throat. After that day, I returned to Lu Cyan's side to help organize his engagement ceremony. I thought, perhaps this was for the best, to watch him get married and truly let go. Because I felt guilty towards Su Wan, I decided to handle everything myself, hoping she could have a perfect engagement. But Lu Cyan was unusually busy during this time, barely ever showing up. Whenever something came up, he only contacted me, and I passed on his requirements. It felt like this wasn't even his engagement party, but someone else's. Su Wan's expression grew more and more despondent each day. When she tried on her dress, she looked at me pleadingly. "Secretary Zhang, can you ask him if he'll come today?" As a professional, I shouldn't have made that call, but I still did. When the phone picked up, Lu Cyan's voice came through. "Hello?" The background noise was loud, and his voice sounded a little hoarse, as if he had been drinking. I was about to hang up, but then I remembered Su Wan's pitiful expression, so I hesitated and said carefully, "The dress arrived today. Will you come to the mansion?" There was silence on the other end for a long time. Just as I was about to apologize for overstepping, Lu Cyan spoke up. "All right, you come pick me up." I wasn't sure why he wanted me to pick him up, but I did it anyway. After rushing there, I found that the drinking party had already ended, and only Lu Cyan was lying on the sofa, drunken and dazed. I squatted down next to him and gently patted him, calling, "Mr. Lu, Mr. Lu." He suddenly looked up at me, his gaze sharp as a blade, and I froze. But only for a second, as he quickly returned to a hazy, drunken look, as if it was just my imagination. I helped him, stumbling as we got into the car. As soon as we were in the car, he fell asleep. Through the rearview mirror, I could see his face. I rarely had the chance to look at him openly, so I couldn't help but steal a few glances. My guilt towards Su Wan deepened, and I quickly looked away, muttering a calming mantra to myself. For some reason, a sense of unease suddenly crept into my heart. I've always trusted my intuition, and my mind began to race. Something wasn't right. There was a black SUV following me, and it had been tailing me for half an hour. "Mr. Lu, Mr. Lu." I tried to wake him up, but the person in the back seat remained still. Helpless, I had to speed up, and the car behind me started speeding up as well. It was obvious the other car had been modified. No matter how fast I went, it effortlessly followed me. Finally, I watched helplessly as it rammed into me, and then sped away. With a loud crash, my car flipped, but I was able to steer it just enough to avoid plunging into the sea. Blood clouded my vision, and my head felt heavy. I struggled to crawl out of the seat. Lu Cyan was pinned behind the seat, and he finally opened his eyes. He tried to free himself, but the car frame had trapped him. I grabbed a crowbar from the trunk and tried to pry open the car door using all the physics knowledge I had, but it wouldn't budge. The gas tank had spilled, and the smell of smoke and fire was faint in the air. The more urgent the situation, the clearer my mind became, and I pushed aside any feelings of panic. I only had one thought in my mind: getting Lu Cyan out of the car. The fire continued to spread, and the car was on the verge of exploding. Lu Xian looked at me. I'm paying you your salary, so it's not worth risking your life to save me. Secretary Zhang, just go. The car's going to explode. I was already frustrated with him, so I snapped. Shut up. For some reason, Lu Xian suddenly laughed. I had no time to figure out the meaning of his laugh as the fire continued to spread. My hand had somehow cut open, and a drop of blood fell to the ground. I used my last ounce of strength to finally get Lu Xian out of the car. Supporting him, I walked slowly but steadily out of the car. Not long after we got out, the car exploded, burning the entire night sky red. I was thankful that I hadn't been brainwashed by the ideal beauty of a thin, frail woman. I was strong enough, resilient enough, to save both myself and Lu Xian. In the distance, I could hear the sound of an ambulance approaching. Exhaustion overwhelmed me, and the world turned black. Lu Xian woke up earlier than Zhang Yu. At the moment the car was hit, Secretary Zhang had turned the steering wheel toward herself. He sat beside Zhang Yu, seemingly for the first time truly studying the woman in front of him. Lu Xian had been abandoned by many people in his life. When he was a child, there was a time when he and his father were kidnapped. The boat could only carry one person, and without hesitation, they left him behind. No matter how much he cried or screamed, he could only watch the boat slowly sail away. His mother had promised him she would never leave him, but in the end, she too took her life. Many people entered his life and just as easily abandoned him. He was always the one who was left behind. But this woman in front of him, she had every reason to abandon him, yet she didn't. He had always prided himself on being able to read people, but this time, he didn't understand what this woman wanted. What did she want? He wondered. It felt like a strange dream, and when he woke up, Lu Xian was still deep in thought, looking at me. My heart sank. Had Lu Xian already figured out that I had inappropriate feelings for him? Lu Xian stared at me quietly. Our eyes met, and my palms were sweaty, like I was waiting for a trial. Why did you save me? My mind raced, and the next second, I smiled and replied, Mr. Zhang, I'm a gambler. The life-saving grace from the president of the Zhang Group is an opportunity that not everyone gets. Lu Xian frowned, silently evaluating me, like he was assessing the truth of my words. What do you want? The philosophy upheld by their class is that the one who desires nothing gets the most, and that exchanges of interests are the most trustworthy. I carefully thought about what to ask for that would be worth risking my life for. Something that would make Lu Xian feel secure. I want 1% of the shares in Zhang Group, in exchange for a lifetime of peace and security. Lu Xian's furrowed brows relaxed, and I knew I had made the right move. He smiled. Shares are unreliable. How about a storefront in a prime area instead? What do you think? Secretary Zhang. I also smiled. A storefront worth millions. Then thank you, Mr. Lu. Everyone gets what they need. Lu Xian didn't owe me anything, so he stood up and said, then Secretary Zhang, please rest well. You don't need to worry about the engagement. I spent a week in the hospital, and the day I was discharged was also the day of Lu Xian's engagement. The news about the marriage between the Lu and Su families was all over my phone. The venue was decorated with roses, as beautiful as a dream. It was all good. From now on, bridges will be bridges and roads will be roads. I paid back my debt and received my reward. But why'd I still feel a bit sad? I wandered the streets aimlessly, and by chance, found myself at a bar. In these years, I've usually been the one to close things for others. So I rarely drink and don't enjoy it. They say a drink can wash away 1,000 sorrows, but the alcohol was bitter. It was so bitter that my tears fell, mixing into a cup of liquid that was both bitter and salty. Just before losing consciousness, I ordered a delivery, asking to be safely taken home. At the engagement party, Lu Xian took a call, not one he had arranged beforehand, but a call from Secretary Zhang. But it didn't matter. He just needed an excuse to leave the engagement party. What the reason was didn't matter. When he arrived at the bar, the guy in the blue vest hurried to greet him. She asked me to take her home but didn't tell me where she lived. I really didn't know what to do, so I called the number she pinned. He glanced at Lu Xian nervously. You wouldn't be her boss, would you? Will she leave me a bad review tomorrow? Lu Xian took Secretary Zhang from his hands and reassured the nervous guy. Don't worry, it's fine, I'll handle the rest. He helped Zhang Yu out, and the woman in his arms wasn't staying still. She kept poking his face and pulling his hair. She seemed to be really drunk. They say that after a drink, people speak their truth. Lu Xian had the urge to test her. Why did you come to me? She frowned. as if thinking, then laughed foolishly. To repay a favor. Lu Xian furrowed his brow again. What favor? The life-saving favor. Lu Xian asked again. Then how do you plan to repay this favor? To give him the best of everything in the world. Why give him the best of everything in the world? Because I love him. Lu Xian took an elective course on interrogation when he was in college. The key was to follow the other person's logic and dig deeper, then lead them into your own questions. At first, he thought he could get something out of it, but he never expected to get such an answer. She loves him. Secretary Zhang loves him. Lu Xian looked at Zhang Yu repeatedly. She smiled foolishly. Drunk deeply. Not pretending. Many people have said they loved him. He had seen many kinds of love, intense and tender, but this was the first time he saw such love, hidden in the heart for years, unknown to anyone. Some things that were inexplicable were now explained. Why didn't Secretary Yang's house have any sign of a man's presence? Lu Xian thought. Could he trust her? Was it just because of love, that life and death didn't matter? The next day, I woke up with a splitting headache from the drunkenness. I vaguely remembered that I seemed to have had a dream last night. The only clear thing was Lu Xian's deep dark eyes. Why did I dream about him again? Dreaming about someone else's husband. Is that immoral? I thought. For a long time, I forced myself not to pay attention to the news about the Lu group. I traveled all over, randomly got off the train at different places, then wandered aimlessly in various cities. I personally visited some people, assessed the situation, and then made donations based on different levels. Sometimes, I wonder, maybe my mom wanted to live. If someone had pulled me back then, would things have turned out differently? There are too many suffering people in this world. I can only help those I can see right in front of me. Then I saw the news about Lu Xian. It was the news of the Lu Group's bankruptcy. On the cover, a photo of Lu Xian and Su Wan was divided in half, with blood-red words reading, "The marriage is in vain. Where will the Lu Group go from here?" I panicked and called Su Wan. Her tone seemed apologetic, but in the end, she just sighed. Secretary Zhang, you should know, I didn't marry a person. I married a family. I am powerless. After the initial panic, my brain started to calm down. The more I thought about it, the more wrong it felt. I suddenly realized, maybe all of this was Lu Xian's doing. For years, the Lu Group had seemed prosperous, involved in many industries, but underneath all that success, there was a huge crisis. I tried to warn Lu Xian, but he dismissed my concerns indifferently. I thought maybe he had other plans, but it turned out, from the very beginning, he had this idea. I suddenly remembered what he looked like when he was drunk that day. It seemed that to him, the Lu family was nothing but a cage. I suddenly felt that right now, someone should be by his side, just like the day my mom pulled me out of the building. Lu Xian had tightly held my hand. No matter who that person was, as long as they held his hand, it would be fine. Thinking this, I rushed to the company without hesitation. The company, once brightly lit, was now mostly dark. The remaining funds were all used to compensate the employees. I walked through the maze of desks, opened the door. Lu Xian was completely enveloped in shadows. The wind from the capital city made the blinds rattle. He looked up at me, his gaze dim, as if deep in thought. I stepped forward and took his hand. I had thought of 1,000 things to say before I came, but now I couldn't think of anything. At this moment, I only knew that I wanted to hold his hand, just like so many years ago when he held mine. He was thinking about his mother again, the poor girl who married into a rich family and eventually became a crazy, disreputable woman. People tried to use all kinds of rules to turn a wild child into a proper lady of the house. She had to be polite, calm, know how to make sacrifices. Everyone kept adding fuel to the fire in her mental breakdown. Later, people said she was unlucky, that she couldn't handle such a heavy responsibility. But what if the rules were wrong from the start? The Lu Group secretly ran some illegal activities. His mother couldn't bear to see such things. She couldn't bear to hurt people, so people hurt her instead. Lu Xian had originally planned to face everything alone, to let all the sins fade into the past. But then Zhang Yu came. Was it because of love? When Zhang Yu first arrived, he saw her. While everyone was busy packing up to leave, she walked against the flow of people, crossing the messy floor toward him, like a knight coming to protect his princess. Lu Xian suddenly smiled at the thought. How could there be such a big fool in the world? She silently walked up and took his hand. The warmth flowed from her palm into his. It wasn't until this moment that Lu Xian realized how cold his own hand was. So he squeezed her hand back. The wind blew. The rain shook. But only her warmth was real. I stayed with Lu Xian while he conducted the final settlement for the Lu Group. He gave an interview to the media. People with righteous indignation threw eggs at him. The Lu Group had owed too many blood debts. The public's anger needed an outlet, and that's what it had to repay. On the day the Lu Group announced bankruptcy, Lu's father had a stroke and was hospitalized. Lu Xian asked me to drink with him. When I arrived, I found it was his home in the city center. I hesitated at the door for a moment. This didn't feel quite right. I wanted to say that we weren't really the kind of people who could drink together, but that thought made me feel like I was overstepping. Lu Xian lowered his eyes. He seemed a little desolate, and his voice seemed to have a trace of choking. Had he been crying? I thought. No matter what, it was still his grandfather. I felt a sharp pang in my heart. I took the bottle of wine from him. His eyes lit up for a moment. Forget it. Accompanying a nobleman to drink. It's nothing more than more endurance. Endurance is what I do best, right? I had never seen Lu Xian like this. His shirt collar and tie were loose. His suit was wrinkled. He looked defeated, fragile, like he was about to melt into the night. He seemed like someone from the heavens, always surrounded by people whenever he appeared. Every move made him seem important, but now, it was as if someone from the heavens had suddenly descended to the earth. In his drunken haze, Lu Xian kept calling my name. He needed me to answer. His voice, a little hoarse from drinking, it struck my eardrums, each sound like a strike on my heart. He suddenly leaned close to me. The distance between us was only an inch. I could see the light shining on his eyelashes, casting sparse shadows. Secretary Zhang, will you always be here? I didn't answer. After all, no one can always stay by someone's side. And besides, what right did I have to stay by his side? But he kept asking, as if he wouldn't give up until he got an answer. In the end, I had no choice but to helplessly reply, yes, I'll always be here. Satisfied with the answer, Lu Xian calmed down for a moment. He frowned, looking at me as if deep in thought. Then, for some reason, he suddenly felt hot. He ripped off 2 buttons from his shirt, a subtle yet unmistakable hint of temptation. I never thought I would end up like this with Lu Xian. For a moment, I was frozen. I forced myself to look away, but for some reason, even though he kept saying he was hot, he kept getting closer to me. I felt my face burning. I thought, this winter really is hot. With the last bit of my self-control, I pulled away from Lu Xian. He looked at me oddly, then went back to drinking. Finally, he drank himself into unconsciousness. Before he passed out, he stared at me for a long time. His gaze seemed to carry a hint of encouragement. Why was it encouragement? I settled Lu Xian in, then went home. I spent the entire night thinking, but couldn't figure out why it felt like encouragement. The next day, Lu Xian called. He specifically thanked me for taking care of him. I smiled awkwardly. It's what I should do, Mr. Lu. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Lu Xian gritted his teeth and said my name. Zhang Yu. You really? He didn't say anything else before hanging up, leaving me confused. The Lu Group was gone, and it seemed that there was no reason for me to see Lu Xian anymore. It had been several days since I last saw him. The next time I saw him, he knocked on my door in a drunken haze. As soon as I opened the door, he fell into my arms. I used all my strength to help him onto the couch. Just as I was about to leave, he grabbed me. I lost my balance and fell into his arms. The distance between us was so close. He looked at me seriously, and called me softly, Zhang Yu. The character, Yu, which was never welcomed, sounded so beautiful coming from his lips. At that moment, his eyes only had me in them. My heart couldn't help but start racing. Closer, even closer, slowly leaning in, and then, everything after that was a mess. All the restraint I thought I had was burned to ashes. The next day, I woke up and ran away. Embarrassed, I ran halfway, then suddenly remembered this was my home. I stayed outside until the sky darkened, and carefully opened the door. The lights suddenly turned on. Lu Xian was still there. He looked up at me, half smiling. Well? Don't you want to take responsibility? I froze, not knowing what to do. Let's talk. I wanted to tell him not to think too much about last night. It was just a drunken moment, but his eyes were full of helplessness, and he stopped me. You're not good with words, he said. Let me say it first. His expression was serious, even more serious than the day the Lu Group declared bankruptcy. It made me nervous. Zhang Yu, you think too highly of me. I'm just an ordinary person. I have greed, hatred, and anger, just like any other ordinary person. I shook my head. I wanted to say that wasn't true, but he continued. I know your mind isn't completely clear right now. It's not fair to make you decide now, but I'm afraid if I give you time, you'll realize what kind of person I really am, and then you won't like me anymore. Whether your feelings for me are out of gratitude, respect, or admiration, you can't just come to me, then run away without facing the consequences. Suddenly, Lu Xian pulled out a ring. His gaze burned as he looked at me. So Jong-yu, will you marry me? I was so dazed. I didn't know what to think. I just nodded. And the ring was placed on my finger. Do you have your ID? I subconsciously nodded. Lu Xian smiled at me. Then let's go. Go where? To get the marriage certificate. We became the last couple to register at the Civil Affairs Bureau that day. When we came out, it was dusk. The sunset painted half the sky red, and at that moment, all my doubts and regrets finally settled.